Hi, my name's Cameron Finch. Welcome to my explanation demonstration of a pitch shot for the PGA Level 2 exam. So I'm going to start off with a quick introduction of a pitch shot. It's characterised mostly travelled in the air than it does on the ground, so the distance covered by the shot is mostly in the air than it is on the ground. This is opposed to a chip shot, where the chip shot is mostly on the ground and just a little bit in the air. But today we're going to speak about the pitch shot. So a pitch shot is useful for covering the gap between your longest chip shot and your full swing wedge. So it's around 30 to about 70 yards. The anticipated ball flight is high, just so that we can get over the obstacles on the course. So this might be a water hazard, a tree, or even a bunker, or any other hazards that you might encounter on the course. So I've got two clubs here, a pitching wedge and a 56. So the pitching wedge is a lot lower lofted than the 56, so it's going to travel a lot further. And it's not going to have as much trajectory as it would with the 56. On the other hand, we've got the 56 degree. This is not going to travel as far as the pitching wedge, but it's going to have greater trajectory. So keep that in mind when we're using when you're using the two clubs when you're pitching. Okay. So I'm going to demonstrate using the 56 degree wedge. And the first pre-swing principle we're going to speak about is aim. So aim is where we're aiming the club face behind the ball, and we want the club to be aiming down the ball to target line. Also forgot to mention about the pitch shot. We want little to no curvature for a pitch shot as well. Okay, so just to note. Anyway, moving on. So the first impact factor we're going to speak about for aim is dynamic loft. So when we're aiming the club face, we want to make sure that the club face is 90 degrees to the ball to target line. This is going to help maintain the dynamic loft, which is going to help us get more consistent trajectory and more consistent distance control. Second impact factor is centeredness of strike. So if I demonstrate here, so when we're aiming the ball, to the ball to target line, we want the ball to be in the middle of the club face, not towards the heel or not towards the toe. So we want to be in the middle, which is going to ensure a nice centered strike, so we can achieve more consistent distance control and consistent trajectories as well. The next impact factor we're going to speak about is club face aim. So the pink alignment stick here is demonstrating the ball to target line. If I set up with the club face aiming right of the ball to target line or left of the ball to target line, the ball isn't going to start on target. So it's really important that we have the club face aiming down the ball to target line. This is going to help ensure a more consistent start direction. Okay? And accuracy as well. The second pre-swing principle we're going to speak about is hold. So hold the club. So it's the same in our shot. So left hand on with two knuckles shown, the other hand on below, and you want the two V's to be pointing over the right shoulder. And we also want to grip down an inch as well. Okay? But it's important we keep that consistent when we're pitching. First impact factor we're going to speak about is dynamic loft. So by holding the club in the correct position, by using 2 knuckles and making sure that the 2 V's are pointing over our right shoulder. That's going to help maintain that dynamic loft of our club, and it's going to help with trajectory and distance control for a pitch shot as well. If we have a stronger grip, at impact we tend to close the face, so that's going to decrease the dynamic loft and therefore be detrimental to our trajectory and distance control as well. Okay, so it's important to bear that in mind. Next impact factor is club head speed. So as I mentioned before, if you grip down, that's going to help us reduce the club head speed, but that's going to give us a more consistent distance control because we're gripping down and it's much more controlled for the 30, 40 or 50 yard shots as well. Okay, next impact factor and the last impact factor for hold is club face aim. So if we're holding correctly, with the 2 knuckles on, right hand on and over the right shoulder, we're going to make sure we're going to if we're holding the club properly, we're going to achieve a better club face aim. That's going to help our start line direction, and it's going to help improve where the ball will start. Okay. The next pre-swing principle I'm going to speak about is posture and stance. So I'll demonstrate here. So if we keep our posture, feet shoulder width, some flex in the knees, and just a little bend from the torso with 60% of our weight on the left. The first pre-swing principle the first impact factor I'm going to speak about is angle of approach. So for posture and stance, by having that 60% weight on our left side, with our smaller stance and knee flex, we're going to help ensure a downward angle of approach or a downward blow to the ball. That's going to help create the spin that we need to create that trajectory over the tree or over the obstacle. So that gives us more consistent trajectory when we're using the pitch shot. Second impact factor we're going to speak about is centre of strike. So posture and stance as well. So if we're standing too far away or too close, we're going to struggle to hit in the middle of the club face, and we're not going to have a centred strike that we want. So by setting up properly, feet shoulder width apart, some knee flex and some tilt from the torso, and just let our hands hang freely, and then hold the club. Okay, that's going to help us achieve a more consistent centre of strike, and it's going to help us achieve more or better distance control as well. The next impact factor I'm going to speak about is club head speed. So for a shorter pitch shot, like a 30-yard shot, we can modify our stance just a tad smaller than our original shoulder width stance. That's going to help create less club head speed because we want it more controlled for our 30-yard pitch shots. So we want it to be more controlled, or if it was like greater distances such as 60 or 70 yards or even 50, we can go back to our original setup with the feet shoulder width. That's going to help create more club head speed, and it's going to help us achieve more consistent distance control as well. Next pre-swing factor is body alignment. So as you can see, the pink line demonstrates the ball to target line, and the orange alignment stick demonstrates alignment. So it's important that we have the alignment parallel to the ball to target line. So if we can set up with the feet parallel to the ball to target line and get ourselves into the correct alignment by bearing that in mind, that's going to help encourage our in to square to in club path, and that's going to reduce the amount of curvature on the ball because we want to hit it straight. Okay. It's also going to help us with accuracy as well. The next pre-swing principle I'm going to speak about is ball position. So ball position for a pitch shot should always be in the middle of the stance. So just in line with our sternum. So just in line with here, right in the middle of our stance. That's going to help with our angle of approach. Because the ball's in the middle, it's going to help us get that angle of approach and get that nice consistent centeredness of strike. If the ball is off my front foot, I'm going to most likely going to hit the ground first and then the ball, which we don't want. We want a nice consistent centeredness of strike and a downward angle of approach by having the ball positioned in the middle. So I've just spoke about two impact factors there. The final one I'm going to speak about for ball position is dynamic loft. By having the ball position in the middle, that's going to help maintain an appropriate dynamic loft for the club. So that's going to help us with more consistent distance and consistent trajectory. Okay, now I'm going to demonstrate. I'm going to hit one, and for this work I'm going to hit pitch and wedge. So for our swing shape, which is the next pre-swing principle, swing shape is get ourselves into a 9 o'clock position. A pitch shot acts as two levers, so like that, whereas a chip only acts as one lever. So it's important to bear that in mind. So using two levers, we're going to get our arm parallel to the ground in a 9 o'clock position. So we can imagine a clock and our club in an L shape. Okay, we can also move up to 10 or 11 o'clock as well for those greater distances and for our distance control as well. Okay, so L shape here and an L shape all the way through. Okay, I'll just have one. If you're on the range or practicing, we can also try distant swing lengths, and we'll soon be able to identify what swing length suits what distance required for the shot. Thank you.